Hello, everyone. This is Bob Lowe, CSIA Executive Director. Thank you for attending the February CSIA webinar. Today's webinar was developed to provide you with an increased clarity on configuration management for a systems integration business. Be sure to ask questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, and questions will be answered during the webinar, so be sure to ask them. The webinar will be archived for later viewing, and the slides will be available also. The host and sponsor of our monthly business topic webinars is Software Toolbox, a CSIA partner member. Software Toolbox understands that you're not just buying software licenses, but investing in a relationship where you depend on your suppliers to be there every step of the way. Software Toolbox offers secure, high-speed, remote data integration between their many software products and others without using any open inbound firewall ports, VPNs, or special hardware through their partnership with Skynet. Visit softwaretoolbox.com/cloud and sign up to see it in action live in our February 19th Integrator webinar. I'd like to introduce today's webinar presenter, Henk-Jan Scholman. Henk-Jan is the Manager of Engineering at the Industrial Automation Business Unit at Hollander Techniek in the Netherlands. He has 20+ years of experience in industrial automation, has a bachelor's degree in electronic engineering, but was employed as a software engineer, and as such is experienced in designing, programming, and commissioning of control systems for industrial equipment. Since 2004, he's responsible for the quality and performance of the engineers and the work they deliver within the project teams they're assigned to. He's involved in process improvements at Hollander Techniek in 3 ways. First, apply what's called configure to order to 50% of all system development efforts. Number 2, improve information management. And lastly, number 3 is adopt lean philosophy. So, without further delay, here's Henk-Jan.
Good morning, everybody. Afternoon for me in the Netherlands. Thank you for attending. I've been asked by CSIA to share my thoughts and experience on the subject of configuration management and to clear the fog on this subject. So I'll try to do my best. Any questions are welcome. You can use the chat box for that. So let's start and see where it brings us. So this will be the first of a series of 3, and I hope to make it that interesting that you will also join the next parts. But this part is about system configuration management and what is it about. So I've been introduced properly, so I'll skip this slide. Chapter 7.6 from the Best Practices Handbook of CSIA describes configuration management. Configuration management is the practice of handling changes systematically so that the system maintains its integrity over time. So I've been looking for a picture to describe this, and it's in the background in here. If you look at this construction as a system, then the tubes are interconnected by the lines. If you cut one of the lines, the system will collapse. So this is the coherence between the parts of the systems. And this is what this configuration management has to deal with. So I'll explain this further down the road. So anyone in the business knows that it's almost impossible, at least I have never experienced it, that you can make a first-time right system development and design. So you will have to deal with change, and it's inevitable. So now the question is how to deal with change. And configuration management is about change control. It's about changing customer requirements, changes in design choices, correction of errors, things like, I really need an extra, and then something comes along. We'd better put that in a remote I/O box. Or, but I've forgotten to put in a whatever. I guess everybody recognizes these kind of changes. This picture is also from the CSIA Best Practices Manual. It's the V model. And I've highlighted the traceability arrow. And as for those who don't know about the V model, I will explain it in short. On the left-hand side, starting from kickoff down to development, is where you define and specify the system. At the point of the V is actually where you build the system. And then up to the right-hand side of the V, you actually verify what you have designed. So in this process, we're largely working with information. And only from the bottom point of the V, where material flow also enters the equation, you start building things. But it's a large part is about handling information and how you do it. And configuration management deals about the changes that affect this information flow and the traceability. Roughly, we can identify two kinds of information flows. So the product information and the project information. And as I look at it, project information is about the planning schedules, the correspondence with your customer, progress reports, contracts, all that kind of stuff. Then you have also the product information and the technical information that define your product. Electrical drawings, mechanical drawings, design, software code, test reports, data sheets, and so on. The difference between these two flows is that project information comes to a halt, to a stop after the project has been delivered. Product information, however, continues to be maintained during the lifetime of the installation or equipment you have delivered. So, during the development of a system, in the progress, you come along a number of issues. And every issue might result in a change. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. And every change will probably result in another version of some kind of document. Even if you don't apply versioning, then changes will come through in this document. So you can imagine there's a large number of documents involved, depending on the size of your project, of course. But every now and then, these changes will affect the version. So during the system development, you will have to deal with different versions of different kinds of documents. Version control is part of configuration management, but not all of it. Configuration management is like taking snapshots during your system development. Like being on a holiday, you take snapshots of these moments you want to record for later. And it's up to you to decide when you take these snapshots. So along the system development path, there might be moments that you want to capture. So during requirements phase or development or factory acceptance or on delivery, these might be interesting for you to register as such. Then at that moment, when you take a snapshot, you assemble all the documents of the current versions of the documents as a whole combined set of documents. And that is the configuration of that very moment. So version 1, 2, 3, 4 of the complete configuration of the complete system as a whole. You might imagine that somewhere down the road, somebody starts questioning about why did we ever decide to do, and something comes up. And then you can point back at the moment in time when you took the snapshot and say, well, we had requirements then and then, and this is why we chose for this design solution. When you have to deal with change, you have to realize some things. And you have to ask yourself what information is affected by this change, how will it affect the final delivery, how to make the change, who will make the change, who needs to know, how to inform them. And this is all about the big problem of the information flow going through your system development. the complete team of people that's involved, the customer that's involved, subcontractors, etc. I probably have forgotten some questions, but you can think of quite a few. So, a bit more on the definition of configuration management according to CSIA. CM implements the policies, procedures, techniques, and tools that are required to manage, evaluate proposed changes, track the status of these changes, and to maintain an inventory of system and support documents as the system changes. That's quite a lot. But in short, CM is about change control, and especially about evaluating the changes. You can have a lot of discussion within your project team actually, what is a change and how to deal with it. It's a good idea to actually draw up a flowchart. Here are some examples. And in my experience, it depends on what customer you have to deal with, how big is your project team, what is the product you deliver, and you have to draw up a flowchart in which you can show what to decide and how to deal with changes. Issue handling. And the best thing, of course, is to also register these issues so in such a way that you can link them to the version changes and the snapshots you have taken. This is, in my opinion, full-blown configuration management. Not only version control, taking snapshots of complete system configurations and also relate the changes that have led up to these versions. Well, your system development process, as mentioned before, is for a large part actually an information processing process. And now we're on the subject why you would ever consider and why you need configuration management. So the reliability of your information is also mostly determining the profitability. Are you working in an efficient way? Any incomplete or faulty information will lead to extra cost. You can imagine that someone makes a typo error in some order for some component, and you will end up with maybe 100 pieces of the wrong component, only because poor information. And you need reliable information when people start asking questions like, can I have the as-built version off, where that central and actor list. Who has been working on that software? Who made the change? Are you sure about that nominal motor current? Have all revisions been processed? And so on. Probably a lot more questions to ask, but all have to deal with about information you provide. At system delivery, you don't only deliver the physical system, but you also deliver construction file. So when you do so, can you actually prove the reliability of and completeness of that construction file? That's the question. That's the challenge. It's about reliability. You can imagine that you can have a discussion with your customer about some change or some solution you have provided, and you have to trace back for the reason why it is as it is. And this might be the difference between actually getting paid for this job or not, or part of the job. So how much configuration management do you actually need? How much is enough? That's a tough one. It depends on your company. If you're a self-employed, one-person company, or a mediocre-sized companies like we are, Holland Techniek, or General Electric. It also depends on the customer. You can imagine that the US Army has a different idea about what it should be in a technical construction file than the local meat company. So this also determines what you deliver. The other thing is, what kind of product do you deliver? Is it only electric technical? Is it mechanical and software? Do you have to comply to some CE marking, for instance? This is in Europe a hot issue. So in short, your configuration management needs to be tailored to your project. Well, if you're lucky, you have all kinds of, you have similar projects all the time. So then you have to tailor it only once. For Hollander technique, that's not the case. So we have to consider every time, okay, how much configuration management do you need? So this is what I call configuration management maturity levels. Well, the simplest thing, of course, is just archiving. After you deliver, you store the latest version of whatever technical equipment and documentation you have delivered. So electrical drawing, latest version, software, latest version, and so on. Versioning is the next phase. You don't only store the latest version, but also every successive version. And you store it with date and timestamp. You store it with the author that made the change. You store it with a version number and a change note. So now you have a little bit of historical track, which can tell you something about how this version actually evolved. The next level is to introduce issue tracking. So you can relate every version to an issue. And an issue starts with maybe a customer that has a new requirement, or you discovered a bug, or whatever. And this results in a new version, and you can relate that version to the number of the issue list. And the latest, highest level is you can do this across disciplines. So you can relate one issue that has impact maybe on software as well as electrical. And this is full-blown configuration management. I don't know about other people, but this is quite challenging. You have to define your information flow very well, and you have someone or people have to be aware of it and how to deal with it. The chapter, I've got a question here, having trouble hearing. What reference was that chapter from? That's chapter 7.6 from the best practices manual. So I'll type it in maybe. That's a better idea. Oh, wait a minute. Chapter 7.6. Just to make sure, I skip back. Whoops. Go. 7.6. Okay, let's pick it up again. So you need to tailor it actually, in our case, to every project. So to summarize, configuration management is about changes, dealing with changes. And it's about reliability. If you can track back every version of every document, and also including the issues that are that caused the change, then you are proving that you are a master of your information flow, not only your information flow, but also of your design process, your system development process. The other thing is that you need to customize configuration management to your customer, to your product, and you have different kind of maturity levels, ranging from simple versioning, the latest version, to a full-blown configuration management where you can actually relate issues to versions across disciplines. So that brings us to the last slide. I'm actually announcing the part 2 of this series, where we will be shown how you implement configuration management without any help of IT software, but in a manual way. And the nice thing about this is that you have to you will have to define your procedures to deal with changes and how you store information. You can do this without any software help. you have to think of it anyway. Even if you do have to rely on software, you need to define this. So again, a question, Mr. Klim Brinke, Chapter 7.6 of what reference? That's the CSIA Best Practices Manual. So this manual is available for CSIA members. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but
yes, that's correct. It's it's for all CSIA members. That's correct, and every one of our members should have the best practices manual available to them at any time, and be able to reference anything, including configuration management.
Yeah, and it's exactly what it says it is. It's a collection of best practices from industry, and so this is one of the chapters in it. So Remco Kappert, good question. What's the use of keeping a FAT CM when the system is built? Yeah, good question. Or I could think of that you have changes in between factory acceptance and site acceptance, and finally delivery, and you might want to trace them back. But like I said in the presentation, the moment where you take your snapshots, depends on a lot of things.
Hank, I have a question for you. This is Bob. What would you say the keys to success are for a configuration management system? Is it in the software you implement, or what do you think in it? Regardless of how you're implementing it, what would you say the keys to success are?
I would say that there should be an awareness that you are actually dealing with an information flow, and that's a lot of information. And I think this is key.
Now that's awareness on the part of who?
Sorry, again?
That would be awareness on which employees, which people in the company.
Yeah, everyone involved in the project. So your project team should be aware of, okay, if I deal with information, then I have to start wondering, okay, who is going to need this information? Who needs to know this? And how to deal with it.
So I get the feeling training is critical, training on the internal processes in the company?
Yeah. But I can imagine it's if I speak for Holland Techniek, it's quite difficult because it's you can speak about awareness, but because every project seems to be totally different than the previous one, it's very difficult for us to have a uniform way in dealing with information in general. So this is one of the reasons that we are implementing at this moment an enterprise content management to support our people in our workflow. And the nice thing about going for a software supported, so for a software tool, is that if you want to configure the tool, you are forced to define your information flow and your workflows. So, but I'm also very curious for the next part 2 of the series that shows the manual implementation of configuration management.
We had another question.
Okay, go ahead, Monica.
We had another question come in. Did you see that, Hank?
About the chapter 7.6.
What is the use of keeping FAT CM when the system is built? I don't know if you have addressed that or not yet.
Yeah, I tried to mention it. Yeah, well, I can't decide for anyone for anyone else to if you want to keep that or not. I can imagine that you have a guarantee period where you have to support the system for 1 year, and then it might be interesting. I don't know. So, Remco, I don't know if it answers your question. Okay. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions. This is Bob again, but I guess the two other words that come to mind in listening to your presentation is discipline and accountability. So training all those involved in project implementation, whether it's hardware designers, software developers, panel shop people, project managers, whoever, in addition to the training, then on a day-to-day basis requires the discipline that they do what they've been trained to do, and that would be a key to success. And I guess the last thing that comes to mind with me is accountability. What happens when people don't do what they've been trained to do? And so I think training, discipline, and accountability would be keys to success in any company, in addition to what systems have been put in place.
Yeah, but you sometimes also have to deal with the company's culture. So if you, on the one hand, depend on own responsibility and creativity of your people, and on the other hand, it's quite difficult to enforce a uniform way of working. So this is the thing you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. While others are thinking about maybe questions they want to ask, well, one thing I'll comment on is that I'm involved with the Best Practices Committee, who has the task of revising the Best Practices Manual. And just let our listeners know that we're, as the task force that helped develop this presentation that Hank Jan is doing, is a task force of about 5 people, different companies that are members of CSIA, that we will play a role in making the Section 7.6 as clear and comprehensive as we possibly can, and perhaps even, if need be, develop a white paper on the side that would help act as a supplement to what's in the Best Practices Manual. Because we know from our auditors that configuration management is a challenge for our members, and we're trying very hard to address that.
Sounds good.
Well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to start the closing here. And but if any others come along, please type them in. So at this point, I'm just going to thank all the attendees for your participation. And our hope is that you'll be able to more easily implement configuration management based on what Hank Jan explained today, just creating clarity on what it's really all about. And we'll expand on that in the part 2 and part 3 in terms of implementation. Hank Jan, thank you very much for your contribution of time and expertise, and your presentation was very insightful, and we wish the best for you and for Polymer Technique. Thanks again to Monica and John Weber of Software Toolbox for being our host and sponsor for our monthly business educational webinars. And I ask the attendees to be sure to complete the survey that's going to arrive. It's going to come your way soon after the survey or the webinar is over. It'll arrive in your inbox very soon. It only takes like 30 seconds to complete it, so we just ask you to do that. The feedback helps us to improve. So in closing, here's a list of 3 important considerations. First, watch for part 2 of the configuration management series. It'll be coming in March. Number 2 is plan to attend the CSIA Executive Conference starting April 29th. You can go to the homepage of CSIA Connected Community and click on the conference link, and it'll take you there for all the information. Quick plug, there are over approximately 23 educational sessions planned, along with all the opportunities in the world to build relationships and network with other integrators, suppliers, and so forth. So it's a great opportunity to encourage all of our members to send some people, managers and owners, and anyone who is in any way involved in the business aspect of the company, come to the CSIA conference. And number 3 is take advantage of the new technical education webinars that are hosted by CSIA partner members. So that was a recent addition to what CSIA offers, and it's our first attempt at providing technical education in addition to business education. Finally, if you have a suggested topic for a webinar, please be sure to include that idea in your survey comments. So before we say a final goodbye, are there any additional questions that you've seen, Monica or Hank, Jan?
I don't see anything coming in, Bob.
Okay. Very good. Well, with that, go ahead, Hank, Jan.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Again, this is Bob Lowe, CSIA Executive Director, and thanks again to Hank, Jan, to Monica, and all of you attendees. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And